The movie begins with a woman named Mallory Hayes telling two kids, called boy and girl, that they are about to embark on a risky journey across the water. She emphasizes how important it is for them to keep their blindfolds on as they go outside. Mallory takes a box containing her pet birds and leads the kids outside by following a string trail until they reach the boat and jump in on the river. 5 years earlier, Mallory is an artist who is expecting a baby. Her sister, Jessica, comes to visit, and they watch a news report about mysterious mass suicides that started in Siberia and are now spreading through Europe. Jess points out Mallory's painting, saying it represents a lack of connection, but reassures her things will be different with the baby. She then offers to take Mallory to her doctor's appointment. While going, Mallory notices a woman who is talking on the phone. Mallory goes to see Dr. Lapham and jokes around with Jess about drinking while pregnant. Dr. Lapham doesn't think it's funny and suggests that if Mallory feels unprepared to be a mom, she could consider letting someone adopt the baby. As they leave the office, Mallory and Jess spot a woman they saw earlier acting strangely and banging her head against a glass window. They realize that whatever strange thing was happening in Europe and Siberia has now come to America. They rush outside and drive the car, just as chaos erupts, with people crashing their cars everywhere. Jess drives Mallory away, but soon Jess's eyes change color, and she looks scared of something only she can see. She drives wildly, and Mallory tries to help her stay on the road, but Jess loses control and flips the car. They manage to survive, but Jess is still in a daze, and Mallory can only watch in horror as her sister steps in front of a truck and dies. In the chaos, people starts panicky running and Mallory also runs with the crowd. While running, she gets knocked down and lands right in front of a house. A woman named Lydia comes out to help her, even though her husband, Douglas, thinks she shouldn't. Just as Lydia is about to lift Mallory up, she falls into a trance, speaking to someone who isn't there, her mother, and goes inside the burning car. Suddenly, Lydia walks straight into a car, and it explodes, taking her life, as her husband watches it in horror. A guy named Tom helps Mallory get back on her feet and rushes into the house. They are followed by a police officer named Lucy. Inside the house are Greg, who owns it, along with Charlie, Felix, Cheryl, and a couple named Jason and Samantha. Jason and Samantha quickly leave when they hear their son on the phone. Dad, something outside, sounding like he's in trouble. Everyone in the group shares their experiences about this strange force that has affected some people. Charlie thinks that this force might be demons that show up as a person's biggest sadness or loss. They all come to understand that this force is invisible, and just seeing it can lead someone to take their own life. Mallory moves away from the others, and Tom goes to support her while she explains what happened to Jess. After that, the group starts to block the doors and cover the windows with newspapers to keep anyone from looking outside. 6 hours into their journey, Mallory and the children continue drifting down the dark river, the night surrounding them in an eerie stillness. Mallory tries to reach out to anyone over the radio, her voice edged with desperation, but instead of human contact, she hears something terrifying, the entity whispering her name, as if trying to draw her in. Back in past, a survivor named Olympia arrives at the house, desperately begging to be let inside. Yes, hello? Douglas fiercely opposes it, but Mallory stands ready with a rifle, prepared for anything. Cautiously, the group decides to let Olympia in, noticing that she is also pregnant like Mallory. Trying to understand the threat outside, Greg volunteers to use the house's transmitters to observe whatever is lurking. He sits in front of the monitors, anxiously watching. Suddenly, something unseen captures his attention, and moments later, the group hears loud thumps from the room. Rushing upstairs, they arrive just in time to see Greg tipping over and smashing his head fatally against an edge, which killed him. Horrified, the group immediately destroys the computer monitor to prevent another tragedy. That night, Olympia tries to chat with Mallory about their baby names, but Mallory isn't in the mood and prefers to be by herself. As she walks around the house, she thinks she hears a strange thumping sound, but when she goes to check, it turns out to be just Lucy and Felix hooking up. After 14 hours on the river, Mallory and the children hear a man's voice calling out, claiming it's safe to remove their blindfolds. He insists he has food and tries to convince them there's no reason to fear the entity, even saying he's seen it himself. Mallory, sensing the danger, firmly tells the kids to keep their blindfolds on. She draws her gun and fires into the darkness, but the man suddenly lunges at her, attempting to rip off her blindfold. A struggle ensues, and Mallory fights fiercely, managing to defend herself by striking the man repeatedly with a machete, ultimately killing him. Back at the past, the group is running low on food, and they realize that no help is on the way. Mallory, Tom, Douglas, Lucy, and Charlie decide to head to the supermarket where Charlie used to work, since he had locked it up when things got chaotic. They cover the windows with paint and use the GPS to find their way. As they drive, they can't shake the feeling that they're driving over dead bodies, but they try to ignore it. Suddenly, the GPS starts beeping with a proximity alert, indicating that the entity is closing in on them. Tom skillfully maneuvers the car to reach the supermarket. They quickly grab as much food as they can. Mallory spots some birds and decides to take them as pets. Suddenly, they hear Charlie's old coworker, Fish Fingers, trapped in a freezer, pleading to be let out. He starts talking about how beautiful the entity is and insists it must be seen. As Fish Fingers tries to break free, Lucy, Tom, and Douglas struggle to hold him back. Charlie then sees the entity and realizes he's in trouble. He rushes toward Fish Fingers, and they both end up locked in the freezer, where Charlie meets his end, allowing the others to escape. Fish Fingers' voice continues to echo, begging for freedom. Please let me in. That night, Mallory connects with Douglas for a moment as they share their struggles. Suddenly, they hear the sound of a car driving off. They rush to the garage and discover that the car is missing, along with Lucy and Felix. Back at the present, Mallory takes a break from rowing. When she starts again, she accidentally bumps into a submerged truck, causing Boy to fall out of the boat. Mallory quickly rescues him and tries to warm him up, but their food and blankets have fallen into the water. She does her best to keep Boy warm, and then leaves the kids in the boat while she goes into the woods to find some food. Inside a building, she hears strange noises and sees objects moving by themselves, controlled by the mysterious entity. She manages to escape, but the entity keeps whispering her name. Mallory shoots her gun at it, which catches Girl's attention. Girl leaves the boat to help, but Mallory finds her and scolds her for leaving as they head back to the boat together. Back at the past, Tom opens up to Mallory, sharing his experience from Iraq. He recalls how he and his fellow soldiers would follow a man as he walked his kids to school amidst all the chaos around them. As they talk, Tom and Mallory begin to develop feelings for each other. Meanwhile, Olympia lets a man named Gary into their home. Even though he seems desperate, the others in the house are suspicious and start to question him aggressively. Gary explains that he was chased by some escaped mental patients along with his friend, who had to confront one of the creatures. His friend fought bravely, giving Gary a chance to escape and reach the house. He warns them that there are people outside who are not wearing blindfolds and are trying to see the creatures on purpose. Douglas, not trusting Gary, tries to kick him out at gunpoint, but Cheryl intervenes, knocks Douglas out, and allows Gary to stay, locking Douglas in the garage. Olympia feels guilty for letting Gary in and worries that she's a burden, but Mallory reassures her that she isn't. Olympia then asks Mallory to look after her baby if anything happens to her, and Mallory promises to do so. She gives Olympia a Hello Kitty toy for the baby. 38 hours on the river, Girl holds the Hello Kitty toy, revealing she's Olympia's daughter. Mallory wraps herself and the kids in a blanket to warn them that they are getting close to the rapids, the most dangerous part of their trip. She tells them that someone needs to keep their eyes open to help navigate, and both kids want to help, but Mallory decides it's too risky for either of them. So, she says no one will look, and they will face the rapids blindfolded. In the past, both Mallory and Olympia start going into labor, while Tom and Cheryl assist the women. Gary, obsessed with the creatures, takes Mallory's birds and locks them in the fridge because they can sense danger. Then he tears the paper off the windows, which Douglas notices. Gary opens the garage door to try to get rid of Douglas. Meanwhile, Olympia gives birth to a girl, and Mallory has a boy. Gary enters the room and pulls up the blinds in front of Olympia. She hands her baby to Mallory just before jumping out the window. Gary then forces Cheryl to look outside, which leads her to take her own life with scissors. Douglas, armed with a rifle, enters, but he cannot shoot with his eyes open. Hesitant, He manages to wound Gary in the arm, but is then killed when Gary stabs him with the scissors. Tom sees the rifle and tries to grab it, just like Gary does. 2 gunshots are heard, but Tom is seen alive as he goes to join Mallory and the babies. 5 years later, just before the film starts, Mallory and Tom are living together and taking care of the 2 kids. But Tom points out that Mallory hasn't really connected with them or even given them names. Suddenly, they hear noises outside and see people driving cars without any blindfolds or window coverings. Mallory starts to set up a warning system outside for the kids. Later that night, they receive a radio message from a guy named Rick. He claims to be at a safe place with lots of food and supplies. He gives them directions on how to reach the compound by traveling down the river, warning them about the dangers of going with kids and how they'll need to see to make it safely. Rick tells them to listen for the birds to help guide them to the location. Tom really wants to go to the compound, but Mallory is worried it might be a trap. Outside, the survivors from before arrive at the house. Tom decides to face them while Mallory and the kids manage to escape. The group, led by someone called the Whistling Marauder, demands that Tom remove his blindfold. When they see Mallory and the kids, Tom shoots and takes down 3 of the marauders before he gets hit himself. He takes off his blindfold and manages to shoot 2 more before chasing after the leader, who is after Mallory and the kids. The strange entity starts to mess with Tom's mind, but he fights it long enough to defeat the leader. After that, he turns the gun on himself, letting Mallory know he's gone. Mallory then gathers the kids to head to the river. It has been 42 hours since they started their journey on the river, and they are getting close to the rapids. As they hit the rough waters, Mallory struggles to keep the boat steady, but it tips over, and everyone falls into the water. Mallory shouts for the kids and spots boys struggling in the water, while Girl manages to swim to shore. Mallory finds her because Girl is ringing a bell she always carries. The 3 of them then make their way through the forest, where they hear the entity whispering to them, trying to use its powers to make them see. However, Mallory's determination is stronger, and she tells the kids to keep their eyes closed. Following the sounds of birds, they finally reach the compound, but the entity surrounds them as they try to get inside. Just when things seem hopeless, someone opens the door and lets them in. Mallory gets her eyes checked, and she and the kids are allowed to go inside. They meet Rick, and Mallory learns that the place is a school for blind people, where everyone is safe from the scary creatures. Then, Mallory and the kids find Dr. Lapham, who greets them with a big smile. She asks the kids their names, and Mallory finally decides to name them. The girl is called Olympia, after her mom, and the boy is named after Tom. Mallory feels proud as she tells everyone that they are her kids, and she is their mom. After that, she opens her bird box and lets the birds fly out to join the others in the sanctuary. In this way, movie ends here. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more interesting movie recaps.